Shirley Lute served 29 years in prison after a jury convicted her of hiring her son to kill her abusive husband in a Monroe County house trailer in 1978. The courts freed Lute, saying she had battered wives syndrome, something the courts did not recognize in the late 70s.
Shirley's release was part of a national movement to free battered women who had killed their abusers. It all started on February 6, 1978 in Middle Grove, Missouri, when resident Melvin Lute was brutally murdered. This brutal murder and Shirley's clemency caught my attention because they raised difficult questions about our justice system and its complexity and imperfections. I'm Mary Stewart, professor of sociology at the University of Nevada, Reno. Over the past 8 years, I have spent countless hours delving into the murder, the clemency, and the impact of imperfect justice on the lives of the families involved. What really happened that night in Middle Grove, Missouri?
When I went to the PTA meeting, I noticed there was a car there, and it was steamed up because, you know, they're really cold running. I got home an hour or so later. There was all kinds of police patrol, everything going on. Mrs. Lute was sitting there then, and she had said that somebody had broke in and tied her up, and she was really upset.
We heard the doorbell ring, and we went to the door, and her son, I can't remember his name, but was there with her, and they said they had been robbed. Wanted to know if they'd come in. She was crying, and so I panicked like you would normally do, and she said that Melvin was hurt. So that was about the first thing she said, was he was hurt real bad. So and they'd been robbed, so I grabbed my .30-30 and my pistol, and my brother and I went over there with her son, went in the trailer. Well, he was hurt pretty bad. He was laying there by the front door by the kitchen counter, and he'd been shot in the back. Well, the boy picked him up, kind of raised him up, and he said, well, he's gone, he said. And I couldn't see his throat at the time. Anyway, we called the police. Wasn't just a few minutes till I think every patrolman and policeman in the whole county was there. Then the coroner's jury was formed that evening, and some of my neighbors was on it, and my brother and I, and went over and viewed the body, you know, and you could see the pellets in his back, and then they rolled him over while his throat was cut from ear to ear. So
Shirley was taken to the hospital by ambulance, but the next morning she was arrested. Her 18-year-old son, Roy, had confessed and claimed that his mother had convinced him to kill Melvin. Melvin's family had lived in Middle Grove for generations and was an important part of the community.
He was the oldest brother. There was 12 of us kids. He just did a little farming and worked for Armor Food. And he was always helping people.
He was just a hard-working guy, trying to make a living, trying to make a dollar. They'd work in the fields all hours of the night, get up the next morning and go again, you know, that type of thing.
He was a hard-working man. He made a good living for the family that he had.
I would say our father was a workaholic. He was a truck driver. Drove a meat truck for Armor Meats, and he would leave home about 4 in the morning, and he would get back home in the afternoons, change clothes, and head straight to the farm where he farmed until after dark. He not only farmed our farm, but he also helped our grandfather farm his farm, so and that they could continue. So he was not at home a lot. You know, Dad was Dad, and he was just always working, and when he came home, he was tired. That's just the way he was. But very hard-working, country man, simple. He was kind of a man's man as far as hunting, fishing, drinking beer and cussing. Good old country boy kind of thing.
Shirley, though, was a relative newcomer and didn't quite fit into this tight-knit community.
The consensus was that, that she was a player. And I just didn't really care for her. She always called me by Mr. Anonymous, but when she saw my husband out in the yard, she would say, well, hello, Billy, how are you? So that, it sort of upset me that, she just wasn't straight.
She was kind of I don't know what you'd really say, different type person.
But the people of Middle Grove had only known Shirley for a couple of years. To know who Shirley was, we need to look into her past, her childhood, and her first marriage to Charlie Welch.
My dad was an alcoholic, and I think in his own way he blamed me for my mom's death because he used to call me killer all the time, and I didn't know what, I was little. And at 9 years old, he sold me to some old alcoholic friend of his for a bottle of wine for that man to molest me. I was just his, what would you call me, his little whore? And that's the way I grew up. So I married Charlie. It was pretty good at first. He worked as a truck driver, and I worked too, and we did pretty good there. And then all of a sudden, when I was pregnant with Krenda, he just was very abusive right then. I had black eyes, busted lips. He'd pound on me all the time. I met Melvin, and he seemed nice. Then, after I married Melvin, he started being abusive to me.
Did Shirley get a fair trial? Did she have an adequate defense? Would the outcome have been different if battered women's syndrome could have been introduced at her trial? Shirley went on trial for the murder of Melvin Lute at the Cole County Courthouse in Jefferson City in May 1979. She was accused of capital murder for conspiring with her 18-year-old son, Roy Welch, to kill Melvin. Her attorney chose not to use Roy as a witness. However, his confession was a compelling piece of evidence. From Roy's statement to the police. Roy: well, you see, Mom, she made me feel like I owed her so much because she done things for me, and she asked me to do it a long time ago, and I never did do it, and then I got in a bind. Officer: what did she ask you to do? Roy: to kill Melvin. I got in a bind while I needed some money, and she loaned me $30, and then she made me feel like I owed her something. Officer: why did she want you to kill Melvin? Roy: 'cause Mel, he always talked us kids down, and he beat her, and he almost broke my little brother's arm. The prosecution paraded a number of witnesses before the jury. All testified that Shirley had asked them to kill Melvin. One of these witnesses, Rick Tremaine, testified that Shirley told him she was going to give Roy $2,500 from Melvin's insurance policy. Another friend, Deanna Rediford, testified that she saw Shirley crushing pills to put in Melvin's food to poison him. Christine Cockrell, Roy's wife at the time, also remembers Shirley asking Roy to kill Melvin. From the trial transcript, what did she say? Christine: to follow him in the meat truck and shut the door and suffocate him inside there. Prosecutor: who was supposed to do that? Christine: Roy. Would you people get anything for doing that? Christine: $1,000, insurance money. For us to be married with $1,000 would be nice for newlyweds.
They were saying those things because they were in trouble and they wanted out of trouble, so they just went with whatever the prosecutor told them to say. Just say whatever you think. I never said that to those kids. Never once did I ever say. I wouldn't say that even to my own son. But they went and they said these things. But it wasn't true.
These witnesses may well have been lying, as Shirley insists, but a letter introduced by the prosecution provided evidence against Shirley that was insurmountable. In the letter, she made statements such as, if you want to do something big, why don't you take care of Melvin? No one would ever know. The only way out is for something to happen to Mel. Then you would have the best attorney that's going. Now don't forget to do it now. You promised.
I remember the content of the letter because it was shocking to me at that time.
Now, what was it? What was the content, or what were the contents?
Roy, if you love me, you'll kill so-and-so. You know, whatever the husband's name was.
Yeah.
Now, talk about mother love, huh?
At the courthouse in Paris, Missouri, where Shirley was interrogated, she insists that Roy was the only person involved in the murder. All I said to him was, Roy, why did you have to do this? I was crying. I said, Roy, why? Only thing he said was, because I needed money, Mama. He's always been a terrible kid. I did not tell him that, and I didn't kill nobody. I loved Melvin. And decades later, the story has not changed.
I did not kill my husband. I really didn't have anything to do with this whatsoever. I think Roy just got on drugs, and it just got on his mind, and he just, you know, I know there was a couple of times that I said, oh, I wished you were dead. You know, when someone hurts you, you're liable to say a lot of things, you know. But I didn't mean it literally. You know, I wish the hell you were dead, you know, period.
The jurors I interviewed also remember her defense as being that she had nothing to do with the murder.
My memory was of the murder that she just denied it. It was not, you know, she didn't have anything to do with it. Somebody else did, but no, it wasn't like this is my memory, but I don't think that she even said, I did it, but I had other reasons.
Only 2 statements about Melvin being abusive were made. During his interrogation, Roy stated that Melvin had abused Shirley and her children, and during the trial, Shirley testified, Mel beat me up pretty bad, and I just wanted to see Mel get beat up too, and to know the pain I had suffered. These statements were never followed up by either the defense or the prosecution. The jurors were left to decide whether Roy acted on his own or whether Shirley convinced him to kill Melvin.
I remember the incompleteness that I felt. I felt like we weren't given the whole story. It seemed like to me, and I just kept thinking, is there anything more?
More information.
Right.
And I felt like her lawyer didn't present enough case for her. It just seemed like she didn't have much of a defense. We stopped and had a prayer, and I didn't realize till you told me that it was you that brought the idea up of having a prayer. And regardless of anybody's faith or anything, we just got together. And I think we prayed to make the right decision, you know, prayed for her. But, you know, that really had an impact on me. It was just, you know, a very emotional time because we were making, you know, a very important decision.
On May 21, 1979, Shirley Lute was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison. She appealed this case and was granted a new trial, but the second jury came to the same conclusion. Her son Roy was already serving a 35-year sentence for the murder.
Our foster mom came to me and she said, your mom went to prison and she's going to be there for a very long time. And imagine telling little girls this. You know, I was 10, my sister was 12.
How did you feel when you had to look at Shirley and say guilty of capital murder and convict her in that way, sentence her to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 50 years? How'd you feel?
It was uncomfortable. I feel like I made the right decision, but it's still uncomfortable to have somebody look at you, know that you've taken their life basically away from them. It was, you know, uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
Yes. I felt like we had done what the court had asked us to do in considering the facts. And so while I felt sorry for her or pity for her, I didn't really feel like I was the one responsible really for her fate.
You felt that she was responsible for her fate.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Melvin's death and Shirley's life imprisonment changed the lives of many people.
You know, murder in Middle Grove, you know, it's not like, you know, Kansas City or St. Louis where murders happen all the time, you know, and not next door, you know.
I know after that night, I hung my gun on the headboard of my bed for a month after all this happened. So one night down at the church, we was talking earlier about a little prayer meeting, and they come around to me, and I just said, Lord, I've got this problem about this murder. It's on my shoulders, and I can't sleep at night. I can't do nothing. I said, just please take this away from me. And I broke down and cried about it, which I'm about to do right now, thinking about it.
Well, everything was different for sure. I mean, we didn't have the community gathering anymore. That when before that, well, Dad used to throw a barbecue for the neighborhood or stuff, and that ended. Everybody kind of went to a little shell, and more or less, I guess you'd call it. It wasn't open friendly like it was before. I miss him considerable.
Life goes on, and we try to make the best of it. It wasn't a great big shock because it just happened. You know, it's just, you have somebody get killed, but it hurts. It hurts deep. I think it affected kids a lot more than it did the brothers.
Then yeah, I am very sad. You know, there's a whole lot of those experiences that, you know what, my kids didn't necessarily get. And there's 1,001 times that I know all three of us have talked about. We would have loved to have had our dad's opinion on that, or, you know, been there with him. He missed out on weddings. You know, he missed out on graduations. You know, he missed everything.
When Shirley went to prison, she left one older son, Larry, and 3 younger children, Krenda, Cody, and Clint, who then grew up in foster homes.
I had these kids, and I love my kids. And I didn't have any contact with them, half of them, you know. And I'd worry about them, and I'd want to see them, and I would worry about them. But you really, you know that you're a mother, but you know that they're here and they're there and they're here and there, and you're just going to have to accept the things you cannot change. And it's really hard to be a mother in prison. I miss hugging my kids and loving them and being away from them. How can you be a mother? You just have to let go.
And she hurt all her kids. All of her kids just didn't have very good lives. My brothers didn't. When I look at that family picture, it just looks fake to me. So I think if she didn't go to prison and none of this happened, our lives would be normal. And, you know, she wasn't there when I gave birth to my baby. She wasn't there for prom or graduation. You know, you can't pick up the phone and call her when you need her. And even when I was in high school, my friends would ask me, you know, where's your mom, where's your dad? And I would lie to them. I told them that they both passed away, and I was afraid to tell people that my mom was incarcerated. My entire childhood, we would go to the prisons and visit her, and after a while, you just get used to it. You just go numb with it, you know.
In the mid-1980s, the Defense of Battered Women Syndrome was introduced by psychologist Lenore Walker. Governors from around the country began granting clemency to scores of women who had previously been convicted for murdering their abusive husbands.
The concept has been used to explain why a woman might stay in a relationship and why she might end up eventually killing that abuser. It is often used to mitigate a woman's level of guilt and/or to lessen her sentence.
The Missouri Battered Women's Clemency Coalition took on the case of Shirley Lute, along with 10 other cases, working to convince the governor to grant these women clemency. According to the coalition's petition for commutation of sentence, Melvin had severely abused Shirley, doing things like biting and hitting her breasts, choking her, burning her with cigarettes, and forcing her to wear a dog collar and bark. The governor was convinced that had women like Shirley been able to introduce the facts of their abuse during their trial, their cases might have turned out differently.
You hear about these type of cases, and of course many of the people that I know throughout Missouri kept us saying you ought to look at these, ought to give them consideration. These women were not treated fairly through the system, and that's the fairness issue is very, very important to me.
I remember distinctly following the judge's orders. The judge had said to us, no matter what you think or any ideas you have, if it wasn't brought up in this trial, consider only what was brought up in this trial.
Mm-hmm. If it had been brought up, I think I might have thought differently, or maybe a lesser sentence or something, but nothing was brought up, so we had to follow exactly the evidence we had. And
Judge Kinder agrees that it wasn't admissible.
That wasn't even considered in those days. And it would have been for self-defense, if something had occurred in the midst of an abusive episode, but no, that wasn't it.
Sometimes with battered women syndrome evidence, the point that the attorney makes is that this person responded this particular way after a long, long period of being abused and this build-up.
Well, that's right, but that wasn't even talked about in those days.
But he also insists that battered wife syndrome wasn't relevant in this case. Battered women syndrome couldn't be introduced in court in 1979, or any information about being a battered woman.
Battered woman syndrome couldn't be introduced today unless it had some relevance to the act as it took place. It's no excuse to come in and say, I'm a battered woman, and 6 months later you put arsenic in his oatmeal,
Its relevance, of course, would depend on whether or not Shirley was actually battered. Although Shirley speaks of Melvin's physical and mental abuse, it was not until the advocates became involved that we hear of a pattern of violence.
Well, I think Roy was tired of seeing him abuse me. When I tried to run, he hurt me, and then he put me down in the basement, and he chained me up before he left.
Other accounts challenge Shirley's accusations as put forward by the Clemency Coalition.
She said she couldn't get away, she tried to. Well, he was gone out delivering meat there for a long time. He'd be gone all day. She had a car there. All she had to do was take off. But she said he wouldn't let her go. That she tried to get the Amish to come down. Well, why would you get Amish? All they got's buggies. That just didn't make sense.
But what was their relationship like,
Well,
Melvin and Shirley?
Every time I was around them, it was just hunky-dory.
And I can't. The family can't believe some of the stuff she come up with that he said he done. Just, it's not imaginable on him.
I ain't never seen her bruised, period. No arm, no face, no nothing. Every time I've been around her, there was no bruises nowhere.
I never did see an argument between them, or any crosswords, or, any good words for that matter. They're just normal activities day to day.
No such thing ever happened. As far as I ever seen, there was never any abuse nowhere.
You never know what happens behind closed doors, but, that sounds like something she came up with. But I don't know. You just never know how families live behind their closed doors.
Nobody knows these things. So how can you, what else could they say? Melvin didn't do this, Melvin didn't do that, Melvin didn't hurt her. How, because they didn't see where was there.
I think she was abused too. I've taken her to a couple doctor's appointments, and she told the doctor that her foot had been broke before, and I didn't believe her at the time. And then he took a x-ray, and sure enough, her foot had been broke before. And she told the doctor that Melvin ran her foot over, and he ran her over in a truck. And then I took her to the eye doctor, and I didn't think that appointment was ever going to end. But she told the doctor that she was hit in the eye with a beer bottle by Melvin. And I thought, God, she's lying again, you know. And then he got to look in her eye and he said, you're right. He goes, how long ago did that happen? And she said, oh, it's been years and years and years ago. And he said, well, I can see the scar. You've definitely been hit by something. So I know she's had some kind of abuse in her life.
The coalition was successful. Governor Holden believed Shirley and granted her clemency.
I had, in my mind, a very good legal team that gave me the legal foundation to be able to weigh these on the issue, particularly of fairness, and make those decisions, and I'm glad the decisions we made. I wanted to make a statement that I, in fact, thought that how these women had been tried, convicted, and held in jail for an extended period of time, how I thought that was an inappropriate amount of time, considering the circumstances of the different crimes they're accused and convicted of. I was basing it on what I thought was the best interest of the people of the state of Missouri and the fairness of the system itself in the years ahead.
The system. She was tried, she was convicted by a jury, you know, away from here. It was an unbiased jury. Why should the governor or a special interest group, no offense, but why should anyone be able to intervene and change that?
Shirley may not have been treated fairly by the justice system, but did the clemency right this wrong, or did it just add to the imperfections? There are no easy answers here, but for Shirley's daughter, Krenda, what really matters is that she finally has a mom.
I didn't want my mom to die in prison, no matter if she did have somebody killed or if she knew about it or if she had a part to do with it. 29 years in prison is a long time. And even if she did do it, I think she served her time. I'm really happy that she's out.